Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Happy New Year, everybody. It is Sarah Larbi. Welcome to 2020. Have you put your goals together yet or figured out what you are going to go after in 2020? If you haven't done so, make sure that you take some time, reflect on 2019, and plan for an awesome 2020. On that note, I'm really excited for today's guest. Today's guest is Seth Ferguson, and he actually originally reached out to me for me to be on his podcast, and that was a ton of fun, really enjoyed it. And so then I said, well, why don't you come on my podcast and tell your story? And so that's exactly what happened. I had him on my podcast, and he's actually also the host of a TV show on real estate investing in Canada. So super awesome. I think we are recording, actually, depending on when you guys listen to this, in January, we're recording a show. So I'm not sure when it's going to air, but I'm super excited about that too. And so you're going to hear about his ups and his downs and all his stories. So excited about that. And guys, I am launching the next round of the Burr group session, or the Burr group class. If you are interested, let me know. I only like to take 10 people at the max, and every 3 or 4 months, set up a new group if there is demand for it. Let's make things happen for 2020. So on that note, guys, enjoy the interview. Hi, Seth. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I am super excited.
Me too. So we met virtually met a couple months ago where you were interviewing me. So now the tables are reversed and I get to interview you.
I'm already sweating under the collar. I'm super nervous.
Don't worry, I'll be nice. You were nice to me.
All right.
But so before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about you and who Seth is?
Yeah, well, I am a real estate investor who started off selling the residential real estate product. I live in Milton, Ontario, which is just outside of Toronto, if nobody knows where Milton is. So I started selling the residential product and realized that, even though I was making good money, money was coming in, money was going out. I didn't really have any assets. So I started acquiring some single family properties, and then we'll get into some juicy stories later on, but I ended up losing it all and then starting from scratch. So that's what I'm all up to right now.
Okay. So let's just fast forward today. What does the strategy look like, and what does your portfolio look like?
Yeah. So right now I'm concentrating on larger multifamily deals with the syndication structure. So we were I was just working on a 278 unit deal in Orlando, Florida that we were syndicating. So that's what I'm concentrating on now, the larger commercial real estate.
So how many years was it in between that time span from when you got started to today?
Oh boy. From like starting investing back before, that was probably maybe five years ago, I think. It hasn't been too long.
Okay, so you grew really fast. So you went from just starting, losing it all, I want to know about that story, to doing large multifamily and syndications on top of that. So I don't even know where to start, but let's talk about maybe how you scaled it the first time, and then how and why you lost it all. I shouldn't assume, but was this in the U.S.?
No, I should grab a box of Kleenex because I'll get all teary-eyed. But, so we'll start from scratch. I can't remember exactly what year it was. I think it was 5 years ago when we got the first one. So it was my partner at the time, also the mother of my child. And so we acquired a bungalow, did an accessory apartment in the basement. So we had the duplex. That was great. Then we acquired, what came after that? Then it was a condo. Then we had a detached. So we acquired a bunch of properties that way. And the beautiful thing about real estate, and if somebody's just thinking about getting into real estate investing, this is the most beautiful thing there is, because with the duplex conversion, we added the basement apartment. refinanced the property, pulled out all of our initial capital, then used that to acquire another property. So we had, on the duplex, we had none of our own money in there. It was all the bank's money. And then we had all this big chunk, then we got to go buy another property. So that's the power of leverage and understanding how you can do renovations, certain renos that will increase the value of the property. And then that allows you to refinance and repeat. So, that was the single family side. And then unfortunately one day, a lot of money disappeared from the bank accounts and the locks were changed on my house. And then I was told I would never see my son again. And she kind of took everything. So everything fell apart.
I wasn't sure if it was like a 2008 crash or anything like that, but
no. This was actually this was last. So right now we're recording this, and we're in October 2019.
Yeah, I guess you said 5 years ago, so it's definitely more than 5 years ago.
Oh no. Well, I basically got wiped out last year. So it was September 2018. September 4th was actually the day. More than 6 figures disappeared from the bank accounts.
I'm sorry. I don't know if I can even ask you any more questions about that. It is pretty sad.
I'm an open book with that kind of stuff, because I think I made a lot of mistakes in how things were structured and set up. So if somebody's listening to this and like, oh, well, my relationship's on the rocks and we own some property, I'm more than happy to talk about it, because
let's talk about it then, because at some point, hopefully everything is good, but at some point things happen and probably will happen. And so that whole structure piece, and how do you do the whole division? So let's talk about that. What would you do differently?
Yeah. So number one, we never had a partnership agreement on paper, outlining, what would happen. Is there a shotgun clause? Do certain things come into play if X, Y, and Z happens, or Z if you're in the States? That didn't happen. We just purchased properties. We were both on title, so we both owned it 50-50, and we were just rolling along. I figured, hey, we own a bunch of property and we have a kid together, everything's good. But I guess I was being a little bit naive at that point. Because where we really got in trouble is, one day she takes all the money and clears out the bank accounts, wipes them out. And then we had some vacancy in our properties, but then she was refusing to sign, because we were both 50-50. She was refusing to sign any new leases on the properties to really, grind it to me. So we had this bad situation where all of the cash reserves are gone from the bank accounts because she took them. And then we have no rent coming in on these properties. And then we have all these mortgage expenses that start bouncing because all the money's gone. So I'm not sure if there's a way to get around that, because that's a pretty intense situation. But, in the future, if I'm doing a single family home deal, I would have into the agreement, well, if X partner takes certain actions that are detrimental to whatever, and we outline it, there's a shotgun clause where it's a forced buyout at market value based on appraisal or something like that, to cover your butt, because things got pretty uncomfortable really fast.
Wow. I'm almost speechless. I don't think I've been speechless on this podcast. I mean, it really sucks. But at the end of the day though, it probably is a lot of us. I'm thinking, I don't have a specific agreement either for what we own. Of course it's 50-50. And I hope that the person doesn't go ahead and clear everything out, etc. But it's a good time to, when things are going well, to talk to a lawyer and talk to the experts to make sure for both parties, just that everything is going to be okay.
Yeah, 100%. Because, I think lots of people, when they get into real estate investing, they're all pumped up, they're really excited, and they're not thinking worst case scenarios. And I don't know what the stats are, but I think it's over 50% of marriages fail. We weren't even married. We were common law. But it's, so right now, any partnership I look at, I'm always thinking, worst case scenario, where am I, what does the paper say? How can I extricate myself? How can I remove the other party if they start, acting pretty psycho, that sort of kind of stuff.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, I guess, you grow from that. And now did your credit get affected because of that?
Yeah, but when you have a whole bunch of mortgages start bouncing and then there's no money, like I was basically like legit, the locks got changed on my house, so I had no house anymore. And then she took the car when I was inside the gym too. So I was basically left with nothing. So yeah, my credit took a pretty big hit.
So is that why now you're in the US?
No. Well, so if we go back in time about 3 years ago, when my son was born. So he's turning 3 this November, so November 2019. But when my son was born, you don't have any kids, right?
No.
No. Okay. Well, so he was my first child, and a couple other guys I've talked to have experienced the same thing. But when you hold your child in your arms for the first time, you kind of experience a transformation in like a blink of an eye. So the first thing is I recognized how far along I was in my own life. Now I'm approaching the end of my life cycle because I've just holding this brand new baby who's just starting his life. The other thing is I had an instant urge to do better and be better, not for myself, but for my son now. Before with the real estate investing, I was doing it for myself, but now my whole paradigm shifted and I'm not doing anything for me anymore. It's for him. And I realized that I needed to be bigger and do bigger things and scale the portfolio for him. That was almost like an instinctual feeling I got, as soon as I picked them up. And I realized that investing in single family homes, even though it's a great investment for lots of people for the goals I had and where I needed to take it for my son, I would have to buy 1,000 houses. And that's pretty crazy, especially in the Canadian market, where we have all sorts of regulation. I don't think 1,000 houses is sustainable. So, and that's why I flipped over to multifamily, because you're able to raise a lot more money. The syndication structure has many unique benefits to it, and going with larger properties, you're dealing with 300 units at a time rather than 1 or 2 or 4 if you're doing like a fourplex. Right.
Now the multifamily, are they all in the US?
Yeah. So it's US based. A couple of reasons. Not Ontario. It's a powerhouse. For myself, I'm thinking long term with this. So I sat down and thought, hey, listen, for the next 30 years, if I want to do this, what sort of markets do I want to be in? And I think if you just look at the Canadian market in general and the US market, the US market is just so much bigger. Like it is a mammoth beast compared with us. Like we're such a small country. We have lots of land mass, but our population is very small. The other thing is, if I fly down to a property, I don't want to deal with snow. So, but yeah, so I'm focusing right now on the States. I've had some people ask about doing maybe a Canadian deal or setting up a fund to take down some Canadian deals. One of the interesting things is in Ontario we have rent control, so that's a unique obstacle because the approach has to be a little bit different. Because I'm a big fan of the value add approach. So let's say we're buying an apartment building and it's 300 units. We're looking for something where the rents are below market and needs some renovation. There's some meat left on the bone that we can go in and exploit. So if we buy that building in Ontario and we do a whole bunch of renovations, we're limited. We're capped by the government on how much we can raise those rents. We can't even bring them up to market value. So that really expands our timeline in terms of bringing that property up to par. And commercial properties are valued on the income they produce with the income approach. So our valuation is going to hurt. But if we go to a market, even Alberta, no rent control, we can go in there, do the renovations, bring those rents up to market value within a year or two, and then look for a refi if that makes sense for the deal, and really push that value up and forcing that appreciation.
Yeah, no, definitely some great points. I mean, that whole rent control thing It's, it's one of those things. I was just reading an article the other day, and, like as investors, when you buy a multifamily building, like at some point you're going to want to bring the rents back up. So your tenants, you want them gone at some point. So cash for keys is a big thing. And I was reading an article that somebody did that, and then all of a sudden they're the big bad landlord. I'm like, everybody does this. Like everybody will, like that's what you need to do in order to be able to refi the building. I mean, it's based on NOI, it's based on the operating expenses, and if
you have time for a 4-hour episode, I can start on my rant about rent control.
Oh man, no, let's not go there. But it is what it is. Like just learn the pros and cons, and I mean mostly cons about rent control.
Oh, it's in California just introduced statewide rent control. I'm going to. I'll keep this within like a minute, but okay. So this is my big problem with it. I'm all for capitalism, right? What is the incentive as a landlord, as a building owner, to put money back into the building and make it a better, safer living experience for the tenants if they're not able to earn a return on their investment? That's the whole basis of our economy. You put money at risk for a return, and the return is based on that risk. But rent control cuts that and basically prohibits a building owner and landlord of earning a return on their money that they've just put at risk. It makes no sense to me. And then, now in the GTA especially, we have such a deficit of units coming online, and you wonder why. We have this housing crisis. There aren't any rental units available for people. We have such a big deficit. Well, I wonder why. Because investors are going elsewhere or just building condos that they can sell instead of purpose-built rental properties.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100% agree. Now, I will say that they now, as of November of last year, anything new is not subject to rent control. So like now it goes to say, like if you're doing a duplex conversion, the basement that is new, a new unit, is now exempt.
That's true. And then we can get into a whole bunch of other like red tape stuff. Yeah. But we'll have like hashtag Seth gets triggered.
Okay, so let's go back to the multifamily in the US, because I do want to talk about that. And that we're like, obviously we don't have a 4-hour podcast episode, unfortunately. I wish we could, but maybe another time where we'll make them into 4 different episodes. How did you get into the US? Like, how did you build your team? Did you partner with somebody? Like, how did that all work?
Oh yeah, partnership is huge, and that's the one thing that really stood out to me. So, doing single family homes, it was myself and my ex doing it on your own, and you kind of do that and everything works out, hopefully. But with the commercial side, it's really a team sport, because you have so many different specialized skills that go into these deals. So number one, you need an underwriter. So somebody, making sure that the deal is good, doing all the numbers, all the spreadsheets. That's a totally different skill set than a capital raiser who's raising the capital. Typically the person raising money from investors is not your good underwriter. So you need 2 different people for that. And then you need a good operator, somebody who's going to manage the deal throughout its life cycle. That's going to be a different skill set than somebody raising capital. And then, if you're doing heavy construction, you need a construction manager, and then you have property management. There's so much meat on the bone with these larger commercial deals that you're able to bring in specialized experts who excel at exactly what they're doing. The really successful teams that are taking down these deals, they make sure everybody knows what their lane is. They stay in their lane and they focus on performing at their assigned job. So the capital raiser isn't talking about underwriting. They understand it. But that's not their job. Their job is to raise the capital. It's more like a hockey team versus a golfer. A golfer relies on themselves and their caddy. So that's like a partnership. But a hockey team, you need like your first line all the way down to your 4th line. And then, you have a couple guys riding the bench, but we won't go into the guys, that are healthy scratches.
No worries. So first of all, how did you figure out exactly who you needed? Like, did you have a mentor or a coach or somebody to walk you through it?
100%. So there's a gentleman, his name is Joe Fairless. And he runs, he advertises his podcast. Yeah, well, actually, is that how we got? I think that's how we got connected.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe's really great guy, longest running real estate podcast in the world. So he's been doing it for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. Super great guy. So I reached out to him, and he's showing me the ropes, and it's been really good. It's been really eye-opening. I mentioned I got wiped out last year, so it's been, I think, 14 months. And very soon after I lost everything, I started working on this stuff. So it's, Joe's been a big supporter. And, real estate's not rocket science. Whether you're doing single family homes or 100-unit building, 50-unit, 300-unit, it's not rocket science. It's just those little nuances, terminology, how properties are valued, just the knowledge that you can't really pick up in a textbook. So, what's the best way to reno these units? Well, this is one way to do it, but I've learned from experience, you might want to take this approach with it, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Okay. So you have your coach, you have somebody walking you through who to find, how to find them. Can you walk us through like the last multifamily property that you purchased, how you got the funding for it, what it looks like, what you did to it?
Well, yeah. So it would be the deal coming up in Orlando. That's closing on October 25th. So again, where do you want me to start?
Hey, take it wherever you want.
Okay. So with these large multifamily deals, I was talking about how there's more meat on the bone. So I was able to I didn't source the deal. This is actually run through Joe's company, but I was able to participate on the general partner side by raising capital for it and participating there. So if somebody's not familiar, when I said general partner, with these larger deals in a syndication, you have two sides. You have a limited partner and a general partner. The limited partners are the investors. They're putting their money up. They're not the real estate experts. They don't, or they could be, but they're participating passively in the investment. The general partners are the active players in the deal. So they're the ones raising the capital, managing the deal, all that sort of stuff. So, really excited to participate in this. It was an amazing deal. The debt terms, it was 3.8% 10-year Freddie loan, 5 years interest only. That's super cheap debt. The place is on a lake. Oh, it was amazing. But yeah, so I was able to participate in that deal as a general partner. And, it's taking advantage of the team aspect of it because, if you're raising, let's say, $12 million, chances are one person can't raise that money all on their own. So you have a bunch of people participate and work together to get that money or that capital raised for the deal.
Got it. So I guess your job or your role in this deal is to fund most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, having interviewed over, let's say, 200 investors on my podcast, you get to talk with how people got started. And, raising capital for these deals is a really great way for people to get started in the multifamily space because you start building a track record. This deal, I think it was purchased for $45 million. So that's a good deal to put on your resume, your real estate resume. And, you do some deals like that, you get known in the industry, you make those connections, and then pretty soon, you're going to be doing your own deals where you're the key principal, the KP.
Very cool. So, okay. So how are you going about raising capital right now? Like, are you going to friends and family? Are you, just using maybe different ways of networking? And then is it registered funds or not? Because the other thing is, I don't think as a registered RSP that you can actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I can invest my RSP into US deal.
Well, okay. So with this specific deal, it was U.S. investors only. Canadians can invest in these deals in the States. So this particular deal was what's called the 506B, which meant that we could only advertise it to accredited investors in our network. And an accredited investor, the securities laws are very similar in Canada and the States. It's, whether you're making $300,000 as a couple, $200,000 a year on your own, or you have $1 million of assets, excluding your principal residence. So we're dealing with high net worth individuals. This goes all the way back to back in the day. I think it's the 1930s when some people were swindling people out of their life savings with some phony stocks and stuff like that. But so we raised capital from accredited investors, family and friends, that is. But realistically, we're looking for high net worth individuals. In terms of, can you use your RSP? We have self-directed IRAs in the States. Very similar vehicle to RRSPs, and you can use those to invest in syndications. But right now I'm concentrating on raising capital in the States.
Okay, got it. So now when you're finding these accredited investors, where and how are you finding them?
Yeah, well, having a podcast is a great way to get the message out there, and that's going well. And the longer I'm doing the podcast, the more inquiries I get about it. So that's one way. I do lots of live streams on Facebook and YouTube. So I'll cover a topic, whether it's the difference between a syndication and a fund. So I'll do a 15-minute live stream. So it's all leveraging social media to put out quality information and education to people. Because one thing I found having those investor conversations is, somebody may be a very successful lawyer, business owner, doctor, and they may have lots of income, but they've never been educated on the opportunities real estate investing present, because everybody's just focused on, oh, well, the bank gives me these products and this is probably what's best. But we all know nobody's getting rich off of a mutual fund that's paying you 5% a year. That these multifamily deals are penciling out, at, let's say, between 15 and 20% internal rate of return. At 17%, your money doubles every 4 years. That's the whole power of the rule of 72. Was that 5%? What would that be, like 14 years? So that shows you the difference of, okay, invest in a mutual fund. Your capital will take 14 years to double. Invest in a solid multifamily deal. Your capital's doubling every 4 years. Think about the impact that will have on you and your life. If your capital is doubling at such an exceptional rate, not to even mention the tax benefits, where we're basically, because of cost segregation and depreciation, we're taking advantage of the tax code. So we're basically wiping out almost all of the tax you're going to pay on the money you make in the real estate deal. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. So I get really excited talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I can tell. Now, because you're in Canada and you're in the US, and I always truly believe that the tax advantages were just better in the US than for us in Canada as Canadians.
Well, we pay such high, especially in Ontario, we pay such high tax. And that's, to use a US example, you look at the population shifts across the country. So many people are leaving California and New York to those southern states like Texas, Florida. Texas and Florida, you pay no tax.
Yeah, I meant more like a 1031 exchange.
Oh.
Like for example, when you're gonna sell your building, and I don't know if it's 120 days or what the timeline is, but you can buy something of more or equal value and you can defer your taxes. I'm like, we sell something here, we're paying tax no matter what. I think, it's just more beneficial to be in America tax wise.
Oh, 100%. And then the beautiful thing is you defer your tax throughout your lifetime. And then when you die, there's a way that you can avoid paying any estate tax. So your kids inherit these properties and pay no tax. Then so they can go through the whole thing again. So this is how these families pass on these large portfolios to each successive generation and pay no tax. It is so powerful.
Yeah, and guys, we're not accountants or anybody.
Oh, yeah.
I just have to do a disclaimer because you never know. But we're just having a conversation. Check with your accountant.
Yeah, no, I'm not a CPA.
Yeah, but no, that's a big thing, and they're always talking about when you're listening to these American podcasts. I mean, you do podcasts. I think a lot of your listeners are American, but you have a lot of Canadians too. but that's a big thing that we don't have. Like, yes, we get the mortgage pay down. Yes, we get the leverage. Yes, we get appreciation and cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to taxes, I'm like, we're not that advantaged.
Yeah, the 1031 is really, really powerful. But, at the end of the day, the government wants their money, especially here. So you gotta pony up, but you can still take advantage of cost segregation, depreciation, all the tax credits. It's just when we divest ourselves of the property and sell it, the government needs to get their share.
Hand in your pocket. That's it.
Yep.
Very cool. So the next part of this podcast is our lightning round. So Seth, I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions. You're going to give me the first answer that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Now I'm nervous. Okay.
All right. So number 1, favorite real estate investing book ever?
Rich Dad Poor Dad isn't really like a investing book per se, but I'll say Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay. I feel like 90% of everybody that's been on here has said that.
Oh, okay. I'll change my answer then. I'll change my answer.
Fine.
Okay. Okay. So I'll change my answer to Don Campbell's book, Secrets of Real Estate Investing, I think it's called, by Don Campbell. That's a good one for the Canadian audience for sure.
It is for sure. Okay. Question number 2. What is your favorite podcast?
I think Sarah Larbi does a really good job.
Okay. So other than mine.
Oh, okay. I was trying to suck up a little bit. I would say London Real with Brian Rose.
Okay. Awesome. Number 3, your favorite pastime. So what do you do for fun aside from real estate?
I really enjoy working out. So I'll say lifting some weights.
All right. Good. It's good. If you lost all of your money and your assets tomorrow, question number 4, how would you start again? And actually, I know you're laughing and I don't mean to laugh either, but it actually happened to you and you started again.
Yeah. So you build a team, you start pumping out some good content, and you raise capital because you've lost all your own capital. The only thing I didn't lose was my knowledge and my experience. And I'm a big believer now that, as long as you have your knowledge and experience and you have a good team, money will find you because there's always money looking for a good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Spoken from experience. Good job. Good job on rebuilding. Like, that's amazing. Like, you could have gone one way or another, right? And you chose to rebuild and do it bigger and better. That's awesome.
Yeah, I cried for 2 days. 2 days, yeah.
All right, the last question. If somebody has $50,000 and they want to get started, how would you recommend they spend it?
Education.
Okay, amazing. So, Seth, if our listeners wanted to reach out and know more, where can they go?
Yeah, so they can find me at sethferguson.org. Don't go to .com because that's an evangelical preacher guy. or they can look for my podcast on YouTube. Just search my name, or on iTunes, Purchase to Profits. I also have a real estate TV show in the west side of the GTA called Real Estate Simplified on Kojiko, if anybody's interested in watching me on TV.
Very cool. And last but not least, I always like to ask this, what last words of advice do you have for the listeners?
If you're sitting on the fence thinking about real estate investing, just do it. Don't wait.
Just do it. Don't wait. I love it. Seth, thank you so much for being on the show. Really, it was a pleasure having you on, and congratulations on, overcoming the odds and just rebuilding and becoming stronger and better than ever.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to having our, rent control episode at some point in time.
That's like a whole 4 hours. I'm just kidding. Yeah. One day. But you guys, Google rent control in Ontario. And if you don't know what we're talking about, you will.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest.